Welcome to Best Picture This, where it is always Oscar season. I'm Mike.
And I'm Brian. In this show, we reevaluate every Best Picture nominee from the 21st century and decide whether to keep it or kick it from its Oscar pedestal.
Now, wait a minute, man. We don't just talk about them Oscar sellouts in this show, man. We also sometimes do bonus episodes.
Is that a Harvey Pekar impersonation or a Paul Giamatti impersonation?
It was my Harvey Pekar.
Oh, okay.
That's a hard one.
Yeah, that is a hard one.
But sometimes we do bonus episodes. Today's one of those days. In 2003, the co-opted corporate sellouts were Master and Commander of the Far Side of the World, Lost in Translation, Mystic River, Seabiscuit, and The Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King. But we're going underground to give the nerds of 2003 some attention. Looking back at a film that won the Grand Jury Prize at Sundance and the AFI named its Movie of the Year.
It was one of 10. I saw the same thing. But
Movies of the Year?
They call all these things winners that make their top 10 or something like that.
Oh, wow.
I saw the same thing, and I was curious because that seemed odd that would make number one over all the other ones. You know, but it was in the top 10.
All right. Well, good clarification.
Sorry to disappoint because I was kind of excited when I saw that.
It's still an accomplishment, I think.
It is. It absolutely is. There's another movie that was in the top 10 that I didn't know really existed. It's called The Human Stain. It's Nicole Kidman, Anthony Hopkins. It's a Philip Roth adaptation, so it's on my Netflix queue.
Add it up.
Since you can't read.
But the film for today, Brian,
yes,
is American Splendor, directed by Shari Springer and Robert Pulcini. Here's the trailer.
Trick or treat! Look at this. We got Superman and Batman. And what about you, young man?
I'm Harvey Pekar.
That doesn't sound like a superhero to me.
Oh, forget this. Why does everybody have to be so stupid?
Here's me, all grown up and going nowhere.
I'm not doing as great as you think.
I gotta get out of here.
My second wife divorced me. I work a dead-end job as a file clerk.
So if you're the kind of person looking for some fantasy figure to save the day, guess what? You got the wrong movie. In the early 60s, I met this shy retiring cat from Philadelphia.
Meet my buddy, Bob Crumb. You should see his comics.
I could write comic book stories that are different from anything that's being done.
This is great stuff. Can I illustrate them? These are all about you?
Yeah.
You turn yourself into a comic hero.
Ordinary life is pretty complex stuff.
What happened to the new American Splendor?
I think we sold them.
Why does everything in my life have to be such a complicated disaster?
I think you and I got a lot in common.
I don't really know what to expect. The way Crumb draws you have all these wavy, stinky lines.
Those are motion lines. I'm an active guy. Hey, are you Joyce?
Hey, Harvey.
Well, she might as well know right off the bat I had a vasectomy.
I have all these food allergies, self-diagnosed anemic degenerative illness.
Wow, you're a sick woman.
Not yet, but I expect to be. I think we should skip the whole courtship thing and just get married.
Ladies and gentlemen, give a warm welcome to Harvey Pekar.
You're Harvey Pekar. You're famous.
Son, you done good.
You are living the American dream.
I never felt more like a sellout hack in my life.
I'm still a file clerk. I have always been a file clerk.
Could you get me some water and a few aspirin?
What, you got a headache?
No, but I want to avoid one.
You should try believing in something bigger than yourself. It might cheer you up.
What, do I seem depressed?
Joyce has a lot of the best jokes
Joy's
in this
good.
movie, right?
Hope Davis,
yeah.
Right?
Why does everything in my life have to be such a complicated disaster?
That's very good. All right, so nominated for Best Adapted Screenplay. That's one of the reasons why it's on our list here. Coming up in the show, we'll do our Farley Awards, the most awesome moment of the movie, Golden Takes. We'll then ask each other one question designed to metaphorically drive 260 miles round trip in search of truth. We'll imagine what might have been. We'll talk trivia and the big reveal. Would you keep it or kick it from the top five? If this were even in the top five, which it's not.
And
according to the Oscar peeps,
some might get kicked. Seabiscuit, watch out.
Oh, yeah, Seabiscuit's gone.
That's been our punching bag for the last few weeks. But first, our Farley Awards for the most awesome moment of the movie. And I'm going to go when Harvey meets his future wife, Joyce, at the bus station for the first time. And we hear some of it in that trailer. But before this, they'd only spoken on the phone. They never met in person. And she was a fan of his comics, so she had seen different artists' interpretations of him, but she was wary to meet in person because she wasn't sure what he actually looked like.
What else do you need to know besides with the comics to know you'd want to marry this guy?
Yeah. Well, in the comics, sometimes he looks like, what'd you say, like a rough-looking Brando, and then sometimes you have stink lines coming off of you. But we get this scene where she shows up in the bus station, and she sort of scans the room, and she looks around, and as she's looking around, these sketches, these black and white artist interpretations of Harvey Pekar pop up in her sort of imagination. And as she scans, we see, one of these, we see two, we see three, and then the real Harvey, Paul Giamatti, sidles up to her very uncomfortably and introduces himself and then says, before, we go any further with this, you got to know I got a vasectomy. And then the scene just ends. And it's a small moment, but it mixes in, the sort of visual experimentation that this movie is doing, along with like the elements of surprise and comedy, all in service of illustrating insecurity. And I think that's something these directors do pretty much the entire movie long.
Paul Giamatti is kind of an expert. He's like the patron saint of insecurity.
Yeah, and this movie is just him grooming for Sideways, right? The sad sack thing.
I'm very much looking forward to Sideways after seeing this. Kind of whet my appetite. Great moment as captured in the trailer as well. So my Farley Award goes to the moment when Harvey is talking to Toby Radloff in the car about this trip to go see Revenge of the Nerds. And I have a clip that our illustrious producer, Mark Gilliland, will hopefully cue up. It's kind of a commentary on the movie itself.
Oh, what movie could possibly be worth driving 260 miles round trip for?
It's a new film called Revenge of the Nerds. It's about a group of nerd college students who are being picked on all the time by the jocks. So they decide to take revenge.
So what you're saying is you identify with those nerds?
Yes, I consider myself a nerd, and this movie has uplifted me. There's this one scene where a nerd grabs the microphone during a pep rally and announces that he is a nerd and that he is proud of it and stands up for the rights of other nerds.
Right on.
Then he asks all the kids at the pep rally who think they are nerds to come forward. So nearly everyone in the place does. That's the way the movie ends.
So the nerds won, huh?
Yes.
All right. Wow. Well, you got this movie and I'm getting hitched. We both had a good month, huh?
Right.
Yeah.
So the movie about nerds has uplifted him. And of course, this movie itself is kind of about a big nerd, Harvey Pekar. I guess you call him a nerd. I don't know. He's kind of a misanthropic nerd.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of putting... We'll talk more about biopics in a bit, but I think it's kind of putting that on its head, where we're stripping away all the glory that normally goes with these sort of polished biopics.
So it's a commentary on the movie itself, but it's also hilarious to me how much of a caricature Toby acts like. He's got this really exaggerated, it seems, personality. He's pronouncing nerd in a very nerdy way. And then you meet the real Toby, and you're like, wow, he actually is like that. And some people have it very tough in life. This is what I was kind of thinking. There's this like pathos to how nerdy everybody is. And you see how tough it is. Harvey has it tough. Toby has it even tougher in life, I would say. There's also some other great lines. Like one of them was in the trailer about that. If you think this is about escapism, then you got the wrong movie. But the real Harvey also says, sure, I'll lose the war eventually, but the goal is to win a few skirmishes along the way, right?
Yeah.
Like you can't expect to actually win in the end, but maybe a few like little wins here and there, like sort of like being a New York Mets fan this year.
Oh God, it's not that kind of show. Let's not go down that road.
Golden takes. What's your golden take, Mike?
So biopics, are not my favorite. But American Splendor is an example of one that's done right. Exactly, I think, because it's trying to be about more than its main character. So it mixes animation with live action, which I sort of talked about in my best moment. But more interestingly, I think, is the way that it mixes drama with documentary. Interviews, you have interviews of the real Harvey Pekar, and then you have Paul Giamatti playing Harvey Pekar. You got the comic book versions of Harvey Pekar. It's
and the play within the play of Harvey Pekar,
and the play within
which
the
is
play.
Crazy.
Yeah, and they're all intertwined in these really interesting ways. So you mentioned his friend. What's his name again?
Toby.
So we get a scene of the real Harvey and the real Toby talking about jelly beans for like 2 minutes. And all the while, they're just in a room that's all white with a few props that are obviously like set props. They're not supposed to be part of like a movie, movie frame. And we have Paul Giamatti and the actor who plays Toby just in the background, not saying a word, just kind of snickering.
Eating other jelly beans.
Other jelly beans, yeah. But I mean, through these choices, the movie becomes pointedly, I think, not about Harvey. It becomes about the creative process, creativity as a means of coping, and those blurry lines sort of between fantasy and reality. And those experimental touches remind us that like that's the point of art, right? To mess with this form, is it shouldn't all feel the same. And I think in a lot of biopics, we just kind of go beat by beat through the person's life, and it's kind of almost like a dramatization, or just it's a retelling of events rather than something that feels inspiring and creative,
or like an exploration in any way.
Yes.
It doesn't feel like it's exploring anything. And in fact, a lot of times I'm very skeptical when you watch a biopic, because that their life is a lot broader than what is chosen for here. So are they not just choosing the events that can be shoehorned into the appropriate plot points? So it does make you kind of skeptical when you watch them.
Yeah, and we see here that it is possible to do both, because we still do get all of those major life events here, but the movie feels inspired by Harvey's work more than just sort of retelling his life up until the work started and how everyone responded to it.
So you mentioned the white screen, kind of the opposite of like, usually you do like a green screen and then have crazy special effects. They did a white screen with no effects.
Like a blank comic book page.
It was kind of, that's a good point. But this was actually one of the trivia points that I didn't even include in trivia to come, because I thought it was so mundane. But I'm going to bring it up now.
Better be good.
Because the trivia was that all those white screen scenes were shot in one day. And I'm kind of thinking, it would be more of a surprise if it took a long time. It seems like those were supposed to be like one take. Like we're just going to let Harvey Pekar talk. And
you have the What's in a Name, who is Harvey Pekar monologue. And then you have a couple of others, with Harvey sitting at the table kind of talking about his life, and then him with his friend, and that's kind of it.
So my golden take is actually kind of similar to yours, because
biopics stink.
Well, not exactly. That would be more of a silver, bronze-ish take if that was all you had.
Yeah.
But my golden take is that American Splendor has created a new genre of film. I don't know if others have done it.
Big words.
I don't know if others have done it since then, but it's not a documentary.
No.
Because most of it is actually dramatized with Paul Giamatti, the mega superstar of the movie.
Yeah.
It's also not a mockumentary, which it feels like. It feels like a mockumentary. But it's not a mockumentary because it's nonfiction and it's the real life Harvey Pekar. So it's not a mockumentary. It's also not a biopic because every biopic is with a different actor. And this one also has the real Harvey Pekar commenting on his life. So it's like none of those things, really. I don't think it's a true biopic because of essentially what you're saying. I'm agreeing that it bends it so much that it's like creating a new form of fiction and nonfiction blended in a way that you never really see in other ways. It would be like doing a war documentary, like imagine Zero Dark 30, where the real soldiers are in there. I guess another example of this would be, what's the isn't it Clint Eastwood movie, the 1517 train or something like that? You know what I'm talking about?
Nope.
I'm gonna have to look it up.
1517 train.
1517.
Oh, you're gonna look it up now?
Yeah.
You're just gonna type in the words.
15. Yeah, keep talking. The 1517 to Paris. Did you see this?
No, I did not.
It was a Clint Eastwood movie, a few years ago. Let's see if I have the date. 2018, and it actually has the real people who were on the train who saved people. They thwarted like a terrorist attack on a train, and it's like them recreating their vacation that led to them being in the right place at the right time to stop it. That is a kind of another example of this, but it's like real life mixing with the fiction, dramatizing it. And that, I think, is what makes this movie kind of extraordinary. When you're pushing the genre that much, that I think you can say that I don't think any movie has done this before. Not that I've encountered.
I thought about the monologue, the what's in a name monologue for my best moment. I think that the philosophy of it is a little bit forced. When I saw this like 16 years ago, it hit me pretty hard. And this time I kind of felt like not so much.
Older and wiser Mike gives it more of a 3.5 on Letterboxd, whereas the younger one
teetered,
gives it a 4.
I gave it a 4. I gave it a 4. But that scene really commits to the experiment of the movie, because this monologue is direct address to the audience. The rest of the scenes with Paul Giamatti, except for that one where he's in the background, he's playing a character unaware of a camera. So now we're breaking that fourth wall. It's got that meta element to it. Mm-hmm. It's got the white screen. So now he's kind of in the comic book. That's sort of another layer. And he's talking about, who is Harvey Pekar? Basically, where does this character end? Is the one in the book the real one? Or am I? Or, where does that line? And I think that we sort of see that there is no line, that, all these different versions of him are him. And that's another statement about the creative process, right? How we go through these stages in order to understand our lives, put things in context, and cope with our issues.
Another great comment on the creative process, when Joyce, played by Hope Davis, is talking to Harvey, the fictionalized representation of Harvey, played by Paul Giamatti. And Harvey says that he doesn't think he'll be able to handle getting cancer. Mm-hmm. And Joyce says, yes, you can, and I'll tell you how. You'll make a comic book out of the whole thing. Yeah. You'll document every little detail, and that way you'll remove yourself from the experience until it's over. That is also kind of saying this is what the movie is about, and I love it when a movie can do that and make it feel natural, which in my opinion it does. Do you think that, well, let's go to questions. I'm asking a question right now.
Let me give you one last quote that kind of wraps up what we're talking about right here about all this. Zam Brooks from Sight and Sound said, Harvey Pekar is not your average superhero. He's at once author and character, hero and victim. His life and his art are the result of a perpetual two-way osmosis. And I think that plays with that drama documentary thing exactly, right? I mean, it really makes sense.
My question to you is this movie on the same family tree as Annie Hall?
Interesting.
Woody Allen essentially playing a doppelganger of himself in the movie. Talking to the movie.
Scene of direct address to the camera.
Talking to the camera as a comedian in the beginning and play within a play at the end. Like there's, I'm not saying that one necessarily, came from the other, but it seems like they're on the same family tree.
Yeah, and sort of playing with the form in service of the emotional truth or whatever of the movie.
That's it. I'm watching Annie Hall again.
I think you're onto something. It's never a bad idea to rewatch Annie Hall. I can see that, though. I think that makes sense. Well, I think we both have some simple questions, because I'm going to hit you with just
Let's hear it.
Did this movie make you want to write a comic book?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, actually, I have to show you this picture. Maybe I'll post it on Facebook in the best picture this page. But there was I watched a masterclass with Martin Scorsese.
Okay, cool.
And super cool. He's kind of like, a little curmudgeonly about any newfangled
Marvel.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not cinema.
You get that tone a lot. He's not talking just about Marvel, but he says that when he was a kid, he really wanted to make a movie. Of course, he has no, actors at his disposal, no equipment. So he makes basically a comic book. And the title of it is like a film by Martin Scorsese. And it's just
storyboards.
It's basically a storyboard, but it's like sloppily colored pencils of like knights on horses and stuff.
Yeah.
And I think that's what is so liberating and maybe kind of feels like democratic about the comic book genre, is that you can be the director, the cinematographer, the actor, the writer,
and the subject.
And, and with Harvey Pekar, you can do anything you want that you can imagine to draw on there, and it makes you think like, why? Just like again, you posted this on Facebook or Twitter. I think it was on Twitter. Like, what's your excuse? How come you're not making something? You can do a movie for $6,000. You can make a comic book for free or for $1 with a pad and a pencil. So like, why aren't we creating more?
We should be.
We should be making a movie, Mike. Yeah. I've been trying to talk you into this. We need to write a screenplay.
Maybe start with a comic book first.
Okay,
I have to visualize it.
Okay.
But I mean, when I saw this probably 16 years ago, I felt that. You know, I was very inspired at the time.
Let's see it. Let's see the drafts.
Let's see my comic books from back in the day. Yeah, I probably do have some sitting around. But I think that it goes back to that biopic thing because it doesn't glorify the artist.
Yeah.
You know, I was thinking about like Pollock. Did you watch that a couple years back?
Ed Harris.
Yeah, I did not like Pollock, but you know, it really shows this artist who's like all consumed with the art and he's suffering because of it. Or like you love Amadeus. I love
Amadeus,
but still, it's like that's not an attainable type of genius. It's kind of the entire point of the movie, right? This is like so recognizable, this guy. You know, he doesn't seem like he struggles all day thinking about this. His superpower, if you want to think of him in comic book terms, is thinking. And his life is his source material. So like, what's more attainable than that?
In fact, there is a tension of, are we supposed to be making fun of Harvey, or are we supposed to be kind of seeing the true art of him? You know, it's sort of like jazz, like, you know, he's a big jazz collector. Sometimes you listen to jazz and like, I don't know anything about jazz. I understand. I aspire to study it someday. I mean, I've always wanted to kind of learn about jazz so I can appreciate it, because I don't really understand it right now. But you kind of get that feeling almost about some of these comics. Like, people think that they're high art, you know, like subversively high art in some kind of way. Am I just not getting it because I don't really see that? There's something, the Letterman stuff brings a lot of that to the fore, because Letterman has him on as a guest, and this happened in real life. And in fact, he wears the same jacket. Paul Giamatti wears the same jacket that Harvey actually did wear on Letterman.
And that shirt with the protest GE or NBC or whatever. So
they have, is Letterman making fun of him, or is he having him on as like a good guest? It feels like he's mostly making fun of him.
Yeah. I mean, he knows what he's got there, and Harvey knows also.
But
he
Harvey feels like he's also being kind of victimized by Letterman being kind of sharp.
Yeah.
And that's what you kind of wonder about happening with the comics. Like, are we making fun of the Harvey comic because he's like being really angry at having to do his dishes? Or do we see some kind of like pathos and high art in that? In that, I don't know. That's one of the things that was really thought provoking about the movie to me.
Oh, I think that we definitely are supposed to see pathos and high art in it.
Yeah,
because you know, it's not the highest art in the world, but it's just the fact that comics were for kids mostly before this, and now all of a sudden he's writing about very ordinary things, and we realize this is a medium that can do that.
And the point is that it's about struggle. It's about something that is true about being a human being, and hating doing the dishes is not usually a subject of high art, but he was daring enough to turn it into art. And you start to realize like, well, I have felt that feeling too. And when I see that comic, it communicates with me. So therefore, wow, this is also art. It's kind of a revelatory experience.
Yeah. A lot of the conflicts are stupid. I mean, he talks about picking a grocery store line is, you know, there's an art form to it. Like, do I go behind the old lady, or do I take the longer line because she's going to take too long?
Yep.
Those Letterman scenes, though, that was another consideration for my best moment.
Yeah.
I love how he's in backstage and he's talking to Joyce, Paul Giamatti, and then he goes out and they sort of follow him out, and then we cut to the Letterman set.
And it's the real footage.
It's the real Pekar. It's great, except for the final appearance, where now we're sort of behind them so that you can't really see that it's an actor playing Letterman, and it's Giamatti. And I don't know why. I think maybe it's just because that was a little awkward in real life.
It's because CBS refused to give them the rights to that scene. Maybe because it was like kind of embarrassing for CBS. I don't know.
Go on YouTube, you can see it, and I did
a
couple days ago. And the one in the movie is much more sort of acidic than the one in real life. He's definitely doing all the same things, but he doesn't call the audience stupid. Letterman, you know, keeps saying like, you're being rude, you're in my house, but he doesn't say like, we let you on here and you should be more grateful. That line's a little far.
That's like making War Admiral 18 hands tall.
I think it's mostly because they wanted Harvey Pekar to say, I'm a file clerk, I've always been a file clerk. Like, this is his, you know, breaking down moment.
Okay, so aren't they shoehorning in, you know, the facts to try to make it feel like it's a dramatized version?
I mean, he is a file clerk. He had those frustrations. He didn't vocalize them in that way, but they needed a climax.
Yeah, exactly.
and they got it.
This is what's wrong with the biopics.
No. The narrative structure is not what's wrong with the biopic. The biopic problem is that they're just so safe and they don't. Yeah. I mean, you're so inspired by Ray Charles's music, which again we haven't watched.
You haven't
Ray Charles.
watched
we
it.
haven't
Neither
watched
have
Ray.
I'm holding out hope for Ray Charles. Actually,
okay,
not
fine.
really.
You're so inspired by how great of a runner Seabiscuit is. Do something with that energy. Don't just tell me how Seabiscuit couldn't be written and then he rode very well. Movie over.
What might have been? I have 3 to mention. Jonathan Demme. Is it Demme or Demme? Demme. He originally tried to adapt this in the 1980s, but it never came about because he didn't have enough cred at the time.
No
course,
Silence of the Lambs.
He went on to Silence of the Lambs in Philadelphia, so he probably could have gotten it later if he wanted to, but it was not to be. I'm trying to imagine a Silence of the Lambs vibe to American Splendor. Okay, 2 other people who were considered for roles, but it doesn't say which role, so I'm not really sure. But Rob Schneider, he seems kind of quasi-interchangeable with Paul Giamatti in a way, at least looks, but I don't know how that would work.
I almost do want to see a Rob Schneider version though, because I wonder how different his career would be if he did a dramatic role back in 2003.
Yeah.
At this point, he's basically just like
has he ever
the Adam
done a
Sandler
serious
guy.
Role?
I don't think so. Not that I know of.
So Leonardo DiCaprio was considered for something, and I'm trying to imagine even what it would be. Could it possibly be for the main role, the lead role?
I can't imagine. I don't think so.
Who else would it be?
Maybe Crumb.
Harvey as the kid, as the kid version, but it's kind of too late for him to like be the what's eating Gilbert grape walking around. Anyway, Leonardo DiCaprio. I guess he's come up a lot in what might have been because probably everyone thinks, yeah, we could sell lots of tickets if Leo's in this. Trivia. I want to read something that David Letterman said after Pekar died. He said he would when he was a guest multiple times, right? So he said Pekar was anti-establishment in a way that you don't see guys like that anymore. Kind of interesting. And that used to really upset me because I just thought, come on, Harvey, don't do this to us. Just play the game, blah, blah, blah. I'm a completely different person now, Letterman goes on to say. And I would be so much more better equipped to view the immediate surroundings of that show now than I was then. Now I wish I could have had Harvey on every night. So maybe he could have been the Paul Schaefer. Could you imagine that for David Letterman?
Who could be Paul Schaefer? That's
Indeed.
A very unique energy, that guy.
Harvey Pekar died in 2010 at the age of 70. A few things about Paul Giamatti before we move on to the grand reveal, keep it or kick it, whether you will kick not only Seabiscuit, but something else.
But others, yeah.
Paul Giamatti has been nominated for 1 Oscar. Cinderella Man, 2005. Another biopic that I can't wait to watch. Paul Giamatti is actually 5'9", which I'm not even 5'9", so that made me think. I always thought that Paul was the short loserly guy, and now here I am shorter than he is.
What does that say about us, Brian?
I know. I also should have put this together because I'm a lifelong baseball nerd, but his dad, Paul Giamatti's father, is Bart Giamatti.
Red Sox?
The late baseball commissioner.
Oh, wow.
Nemesis of Pete Rose.
Whoa.
He was also president of Yale University, Bart Giamatti was.
That's crazy. It's a life.
Paul Giamatti also. I'm sorry to say that we cannot add Paul Giamatti to our list of dropouts, high school or otherwise. Yeah. He actually got a master's in drama from Yale. And last thing, Paul Giamatti was named in a Weird Al song called Lame Claim to Fame. The line goes, I don't mean to brag, but Paul Giamatti's plumber knows me by name.
I used to love Weird Al. I don't know his later stuff, but I'll tell you what, his early stuff, I can quote it.
Oh, yeah.
Off the dome. Keep it or kick it?
I will kick Seabiscuit.
Okay. You're kicking the biscuit. The rest get tough, right?
The rest do get tough.
I really struggled with it also. I said, okay, I'm not going to kick Mystic River.
Yeah,
that's going to stay.
I can't kick Mystic River either.
But then the other three, you have Lost in Translation, you have Master and Commander, and you have Return of the King. And that's a tough group. I really went back and forth with Master and Commander a lot because these movies could not be more different. One is sort of about how impressive the production is, right? Master and Commander is all production, and it's great. This movie it's impressive production-wise, but in a totally different way, and it's experimental and low budget and totally the kind of movie the Oscars give no attention to. And Master and Commander's on the other side of the spectrum, but doesn't make it worse. So that one I struggled with, and I think I might end up kicking Master and Commander for it.
I did really like American Splendor, and I think this is where, going back to our, this is the debate of the show. This is the reason we exist as radio, as podcast personalities.
Yep.
Is trying to understand why you would kick something, because we have to, ultimately in our lives, we only have so much time. We do have to choose what movies to watch and then possibly rewatch someday. But yeah, I don't know. I don't think that I probably wouldn't kick this for any of the others, although I haven't watched Return of the King again, but just because I might not kick it doesn't mean I don't really like it, because I did really like American Splendor.
Yeah, I always kind of come back to that sort of personal thing, where I'll look back and I'll say, in a few years, which movie am I is gonna mean more to me? Which one will I want to watch again? Which one made more of an impact the very first time I watched it? And especially in this zone where we're talking about like 2003, 2006-ish, this was my coming of age party.
So
with movies. So that a lot of these that I saw, around that time, they're gonna leave a mark.
So you liked this movie more now than you did before, or less now than you did the first time?
It probably made more of an impact emotionally the first time, but this time I really respected the sort of docudrama thing that it does.
Me too. It's, I don't know. I cannot make up my mind about 2003. There's a lot that are in the running.
I mean, especially because it's so easy to imagine what this movie could have been in other directors' hands, just a straight up sort of boring biopic about this blue collar guy who's down on his luck and decides to make a comic book, and he's able to, reach some form of maybe not self-actualization, but some sort of satisfaction through the creative process. And that just wouldn't have been anywhere near as interesting. So I give this credit for like innovating.
Yeah, absolutely. The innovation part is what stands out the most. I guess when Harvey is a judge, a criterion that I use on movies is when they're trying to, when you suspect that this is a moment when you're supposed to be all in emotionally in that moment, my question is, am I? That's probably, it's one of the biggest criteria that I use. And I guess there were times when I was more intellectually interested in the form than I was feeling like so much pathos for Harvey Pekar's character. Including one example is that line in the trailer where Hope Davis's character is saying, "Let's just skip the courtship and go right to marriage." And I'm trying to think, I kind of want to believe that they would do that because they're both that weird, but like, do I really buy that love story? I couldn't really totally buy it.
But
did you buy it?
I don't think that you're supposed to buy. I mean, this is not. They're not swept up in in a flurry of romantic love.
No,
they both got together and sort of realized that we're on a similar wavelength, and we have a kind of a disdain for most other people. So let's just do it.
Let's just get married, sort of almost on a whim.
Yeah, maybe we'll be happier together than apart, since we're kind of too.
So are they in love?
I will say probably not at the beginning, but that changes.
So you get married even though you're not in love.
Happens every day, Brian. Arranged marriage is generations old.
Arranged by whom? By Toby?
I mean, in this case, I think I see it as sort of a self-directed arranged marriage. We think this will work. Let's just do it. We're not getting any younger.
So that's not arranged.
You know what I mean. They're not going through, they're skipping the courtship because the court, so many things can go wrong. We might find out that we don't like each other. Let's just go for it and see what happens.
They're both the type of people who would hate the social games of courtship.
Exactly. Yeah. And so they're trying to skip right over that. Mm-hmm. And also, if they're both unhappy anyway, it's like, what's the worst that can happen? Mm-hmm. So you kind of just go into it that way, and sometimes it works out.
Yeah, the commentary on art definitely makes it a candidate. It's definitely a standout movie of the year, for me.
And also, let's just talk about the adapted screenplay for a second.
Yeah.
This was nominated, did not win for adapted screenplay because it lost to Return of the King, that won everything that year. Return of the King is not a good movie because of its script.
No.
It's a good movie because of its production, its direction, its costumes, its makeup, its special effects. The script is like last on that list. I would take that away in a second and give it to this.
I agree with you there. I think that adapted, to me, it feels like it should do something that the original did not seem to suggest immediately. And the new thing is in somehow building on and maybe even improving on the original. Mm-hmm. So with Return of the King and movies that seem to be like strictly by the book, it seems almost cheating to, like, why doesn't every Shakespeare adaptation then win adapted every time? Because, this is better than Shakespeare?
It's like a Lifetime Achievement Award for the trilogy. For the past 3 years, you made these huge movies that everybody seemed to love, and they were based off of these old books. Like, who would have thought? And then they got all the awards in the last year because they realized they blew it in 2001, and Fellowship should have won. Well, I don't know if it should have won Best Picture, but it's the best of the franchise. We can both agree.
I haven't watched this in a while, and I don't remember even what I put whether I put Beautiful Mind above Fellowship.
No, that would
Beautiful
be the wrong
Mind was
choice.
good, though. I can't remember. Anyway.
Next episode.
Moving on. The next episode we'll do Lord of the Rings, Return of the King, in which some small people run around with some other taller people. And then there's like four or five different endings at the end.
All in succession.
Yes.
For sure. And then we'll wrap up our 2003 series with one more bonus episode after that. We'll do Big Fish, and then we'll do our year in review and try to figure out which movies are going to stay and which ones are going to go.
Which, by the way, I have Big Fish from the library, so don't request it yet and kick me off because I haven't watched it
It's
yet.
on Hulu. No need.
Oh, there you go.
But before that, we want to hear from you. What do you think about biopics in general and how American Splendor handles
Love 'em.
it? Is it the greatest biopic of all time? Maybe not, but it's a good one. Send in your thoughts and we'll read your answers on the show. You can find us at bestpicturethis.com, on Spotify, Apple, or wherever else you get your podcasts. We're also on Facebook and Twitter at Best Picture This. And for 15 years of Golden Takes, head over to Letterboxd, where you'll find me, Mike Cavalieri.
Do you have a favorite movie from the past that doesn't get the attention it deserves? If you become a patron of this show by visiting patreon.com/bestpicturethis, you can help choose a movie for one of our bonus episodes, including the most recent movie, Pleasantville, chosen by Maddie.
Thanks to WNZF and Mark Gilliland for producing. And please remember to rate, review, and subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and everywhere else.
Thanks for sticking with us, because we know that even an ordinary Best Picture This episode is pretty complex stuff.